Hey guys, welcome back to the VIP Financial Ed channel. It's your cash flow coach, Matthew Pillmore here. I'm glad to have you guys. This is a little bit of a different episode. As you can see on the couch in front of me, we've got a couple of very special guests. We've got Michael and Scott with Little Pink Houses of America. And I had an interesting email come about that I want to share with you guys. But before I do that, how this all came about was Michael and I have had a multi-year relationship now, and it's deepened into a friendship, and we've shared on many stages our terrific content, and I've always been extremely fascinated by what these guys teach. So as I started seeing big crowds gravitating towards their booth as well as their presentation, I became increasingly curious and found the content to be extremely fascinating. Now, to specify, this is a potential revenue stream which we bring onto the channel regularly because, of course, we want you guys to maximize your cash flow. And in order to do that, we've got to grow our income, and we've got to start to reduce and even eliminate a lot of our liabilities in life. And so we saw this as a really great opportunity. Now, full transparency, I am not currently using this specific program myself personally, and oftentimes I do actually beta test these things for you. In fact, I'm going through Dan Locke's program right now. However, this program is just something that I would not be able to fully commit to 10, 20, 30 hours a week, maybe even full time. It'd be completely impossible for me. What I like about it is a way that somebody can truly up level from a salaried position, can be a terrific side hustle, where you can make tens of thousands of dollars each and every month. I just cannot afford to give up tens of hours per week in order to earn tens of thousands per month. It just doesn't fit into where we are professionally right now. So that's why I'm not doing it. But if I was in a position where I was currently earning less than the potential that I could earn with Little Pink Houses of America, I would be not just fascinated, but I would be pursuing it. I'd be looking more deeply into it, and I would be making some decisions. So that's really why I'm bringing it to you guys. I want you guys to have access to all the resources that I discover along the way. Well, it took off. I will say that this was a much bigger success right out of the gate than we had initially anticipated. Michael and I had talked a little bit about what expectations should be from a YouTube channel like this, and I think we far surpassed them. You guys probably heard from triple-digit respondees from the last few videos we did. Is that right? Okay. So it was, you guys were excited about the possibilities, and I don't blame you. And so it is certainly my responsibility. I look at it as an obligation to bring to you guys all the information as I uncover it. And that means that the number one thing that we've been hearing about that people wanted to hear from Michael and Scott regarding was pricing. So we're going to get into that in this series. We're going to be bringing you guys a whole handful of videos while they're here in town. So here we are today to talk on this specific episode about this email, and it was subjected questionable business, which is why the video is titled that. And one of you guys, as a viewer, came to me and had pointed out that there was a history with Michael's co-owner, Scott. And I wanted to actually talk with him specifically about this, but I didn't want to do it in a way that was inauthentic to you guys, which is why I actually proposed that we do it on video. And Scott was gracious enough to actually fly in with Michael, which was already pre-scheduled prior to getting the email, because we wanted to share with you guys a handful of case studies and show you that this actually can work, because it really boils down to results. And I want to make sure that you guys have every opportunity to get results. And so when this was brought to my attention, I had immediate concerns, and I wanted to understand his side of it. And that's what we're here to talk about today. I want to understand, what it is that was going on. This was from something that happened back in 2005. I wanted to understand how it happened. I wanted to understand how it's different today. And I want to understand how you guys are protected. But I want you to use this information to make your own decisions. I'm not here to do that for you. Always do your homework, folks. And I really can't thank you enough for your loyalty, for your willingness to send me emails like that and just simply make me aware. I'm only one person, and I can't be everywhere at once. So you guys are a tremendous help when it comes to keeping me informed. So let's do it together. This is going to be mutual. Scott and Michael are here to give you guys a ton of great information over the next 2 days. And from there, hopefully you guys will find yourselves doing something that you really enjoy that can make you a lot of money. Because that's really what we've been focusing more on than ever before, is how do we become high income earners, not just debt free. So let's give it over to Scott, and he'll go ahead and give you his background, and I'll ask some questions along the way, but I'm going to let him take over from here. So Scott, thanks for coming out.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for having me first and foremost. And it was only about maybe 10 days ago that this was brought to our attention. And when I had heard, I not only appreciated the offer, but realized it was that important to me on a personal level that I wanted to come out here just to make this video. So not only thank you for the opportunity to be here, but I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the person who sent the email in. As I mentioned before we were filming, I've always viewed it as an opportunity when people will broach some of my past, which we're very transparent about in our own little circle, but I've always viewed it as an opportunity to be able to kind of share at least the other side of the story and kind of what really transpired, kind of during the lowest chapter of my life, undoubtedly. So Mike, I know, did some videos. We had a great response, and that's been really exciting. And kind of from that, we had a feeling that we'd have a chance to maybe broach a little bit of my past. So having said that, if I may just give a quick backstory on myself.
Yeah.
So 23 years full-time real estate investing, kind of a real estate family. Bought my first house at 14. That's a whole nother story. As I say, the fish at the time was about that big. Over the years, it's gotten to be about that big. But just kind of born and raised to be in real estate. And to this point, I've done over 2,000 deals. Always had a specialization in what we call non-traditional real estate. So more investor-based, buying and selling, not really using banks, and a lot of creative strategies. And so that really is my background. Ran a guy named Ron LeGrand's real estate platform for a few years. Actually did a lot of his high-level coaching as well prior to starting Pink, which we're really excited about because we're in process of franchising, and I just have some really neat opportunities that are sitting in front of us. So I'm sure you guys will touch on that as we go. But as far as kind of my backstory, I'll kind of dive in. So kind of what the trajectory it changed, not only my father's life but mine as well. It was 1984, and there was a book called How to Wake the Financial Genius Inside of You. And as the story goes, it was a newspaper ad, and for $10 you could send a check in, and they would not cash it for 30 days. And if you didn't like the book, you simply sent it back, and they would return your check. So as I've said, knowingly, in full disclosure, my father did write a bad check, didn't have $10 in his account. I have a younger brother, 4 years my junior, and my father was a phys ed teacher and a football coach. My mom taught science, and both came from very humble beginnings and wanted to provide a better life for their kids. And at the path that they were on was not going to do that. So bought this book, read it 2 or 3 times cover to cover, sent it back, got his bad check back before they cashed it. And from there, he did a wholesale deal and made $4,200. And I always get the goose pimples telling the story, but he and my mom at the time cashed the check, went in the safe deposit box room, and threw all the money up in the air, and it was all the money they'd ever seen. And it really started my father on that path of real estate, and ultimately not only changed the trajectory of his life, but ultimately mine as well. So fast forward the tape, he was kind of a lightning rod and did well for himself. And he was a good old boy that was a local guy, got a football scholarship, and came back home and started doing well for himself. So it was kind of a neat story, and I know people were drawn to it at the time. And as he became more successful, his story became more and more prevalent. Well, one of the things that he was doing, particularly with his business model, I'll just kind of tell you very simply, and to this day, it still has a lot of merit as far as the model is concerned. Unfortunately, Matt, it just was transacted in the wrong areas, the wrong ways. There just was a lot of sloppiness, and ultimately it led to the demise of the company. So there was merit in the model, it just was executed, unfortunately, the wrong way, and ultimately led to devastating consequences. And so fast forward the tape, I wanted to drop out of school to start making money. I always enjoyed making money. Parents wouldn't let me. I'm glad they didn't. They forced me to graduate from college, and so I took extra classes just to get done. Played a little football, and as we joked that my freshman year, actually went to Bowling Green. Same time Mike was there, didn't know him, and didn't ever cross his path.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
It's really wild. So
couldn't find that out until 10, 12
yeah,
years
right,
later.
right. But as I say, the NFL called specifically to tell me, you got no chance, man, so don't even bother pursuing. But so took extra classes to graduate early, and then want to start working. So my first primary job with my father was acquisitions. So we were very much a volume-based company. So how I've done over 2,000 deals at my age is we were doing about 150 of these every year. So we would buy them for cash. We would renovate them, and then the exit strategy was very specific. We're looking for folks who could afford a mortgage and a down payment, but for a lot of reasons may not be able to walk into the bank and qualify today. Self-employed demographic, business owners was a big target, still is to this day. In fact, today in 2019 is never been more challenging to get a traditional or institutional bank loan. So the essence of our business today, which is distinctly different from when it was back in my father's company, the same demographic still really exists and still very prevalent. So as we were, by the way, so we would work hard to get our buyers not only credit qualified, but mortgage ready within a period of time. And the expressed intent of the transaction was to get them a bank loan and deed to the home in their name, and as we said then, and they live happily ever after was always our hope. And so we were doing about 13 of these every single month. So very much a volume base. My biggest month, I bought 32 houses, I bought 6 in one day, and we just were really quite a machine. So unfortunately, as I said, doing it in the wrong areas, wrong parts of town, growing too big too fast, very sloppy, and ultimately it led to the demise. So in 1997, the year before I graduated college, I'm dating myself, by the way, people are going to know my age now, but my father, as the story goes, there was a local investor who had pulled about $300,000 from a stockbroker to invest it with my father. At the time, he was advertising on the radio, Rush Limbaugh, 15%, guaranteed interest rate of return, collateralized with a mortgage, secured with a mortgage, and at the time that was very much towing the line and might have even stepped over the line advertising that way, but again, that was kind of my father's MO at the time. And so the stockbroker who had the funds moved over to my father called the Division of Securities, which is the state level SEC in Ohio, and said, who is this John Ulmer guy, and I don't see him, and he's not licensed, et cetera, et cetera. So the Division of Securities issued what's called a cease and desist. They said, we don't know what's going on, want to get our arms around things, stop what you're doing. And so for the next 6 months, as I'm told, they were back and forth and ultimately didn't find any improprieties at the time. But what they did come up with is what's called a consent decree. And the rules were very simple. One is you have to have one house, one mortgage, and one investor. Pair them together. Very simple stuff. The second part was had to do with the loan to value and what we were advertising. If we were advertising a 70% loan to value, it had to be that, not 69, not 71, 70%. And so no penalties, fines, fees, anything like that. Again, kind of a good old boy, didn't know any better, and they said, look, you entered into this consent decree, agree that you're going to operate what we kind of call in the box, and going forward you would not be required to register as a licensed securities dealer in the state of Ohio. You'd be exempt under Ohio securities law. So after that, 6 weeks later, was not there yet, but I'm told things were kind of back to the way they were. And what that means is this, Matt. My father at the time of his peak had 273 investors. Most of them had invested with him for over 10 years. Not all of them, but the majority had been long term. So the investor would lend money, we'd buy the home, fix it up, work with the buyer to get them credit ready, mortgage qualified. Once they got their loan, the investor would be given a satisfaction and a release of the mortgage. Their funds, or the principal plus accrued interest to the date of closing, would ultimately be given to them or delivered to them by the title agency. We were paying interest-only checks every month on the investment that they had made. So these interest checks became very important in their lives, and understandably so. So they didn't want the interest checks to stop, so they would want to reinvest the money. There were a couple examples that I won't expound on for the sake of time, where people actually were upset with my dad that they got their principal investment back. And one example, again, without sharing, there was a doctor who was very upset at my father and called him at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday and said, you need to get down here before the close of business and pick up my check. You said this was 5 years. I don't want this. I want the interest to continue. So, but the minute he took the check back, it became an unsecured investment and was outside of the purview of the box that they had agreed to. Right there was a violation of securities law. And so compound that with 150 of these a year, averaging 13 of these on a monthly basis, cashing them out, rolling the money back over. And in full candor, and as I always like to say, very big on full transparency, full disclosure, my father had this insecurity that if people got their principal investment back, they would take it and invest it somewhere else. And I don't know where that came from. It was totally unfounded, but in an effort to avoid that insecurity, he would very quickly take the money back so we could reinvest it. Well, again, it just was in pure violation of the securities law that he had agreed to.
Without knowing. It wasn't malicious.
It wasn't malicious. It was sloppy, growing too big too fast. And but I think most people that were involved in that would tell you that my dad was a lot of things, but malicious and kind of ill-intentioned he was not.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that all sounds great. So guys, I wanted to give you guys a better understanding of where I was coming from. I haven't heard any of this, so most of this is new. We were having some conversations, and obviously Scott is excited to share his side of it because there's always two sides. And I told him, and I've told you guys before, that my business life through my 20s was a major learning experience, from having bad partnerships to having somebody that invested in our company that was later convicted of Ponzi scheming, which then led us to have to deal with a receivership in Pennsylvania. Guys, learning business is tough. And so I really wanted to kind of scrutinize this with you and on your behalf, because I don't really care as much about what happened, the ins and outs and the specifics. I told him the same thing 30 minutes ago. Really, I think what's most important to me, if I'm looking at this from your viewpoint and in your shoes, and if I'm pursuing this opportunity, it's a business opportunity, that's what it is. I'm going to want to know, how is my money safe? How is it different than what happened the last time? There were some speculative tie-ins from the email that my audience member, his name's Luke, shout out Luke, sent to us, that was trying to basically say that there were similarities between what was going on then and what's happening now. Now, to give you guys an insider's look, Luke has absolutely no idea. Luke doesn't work with these guys. Out of the 100+ people that have been responsive and interested in what they do since our last series of videos, I've heard nothing but great responses so far, right? So there really hasn't been anything firsthand from my standpoint that would lead me to be concerned, other than what happened here 13, 14 years ago. And so what I'm trying to do is figure out for you guys, how do we know going in that what people invest in their own franchise, which eventually will be an actual franchise without air quotes, how do I know that money's safe, right? Let's say, and we were sort of speculatively or hypothetically discussing, well, let's talk about the plane going down. I mean, it's not exactly the nicest weather out there right now, right? These guys are about to fly in a few hours. How do we know that we're ever going to hear from them again? We don't. So if their planes crash, 2 planes, it'd be remarkable. How do we know that you guys aren't going to simply go down with the airline, okay? At the end of the day, I want to know that you guys at least have the makings of a business that can function without their ongoing assistance to some extent. And maybe that's true, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's too much to ask for. They asked me the same question when I told them I wanted to know that. They said, well, what would happen in your case? And I said, our business has receivables that come in every single month, and we would coach out. Every single person that signs up for our one-on-one coaching would be coached for their full 30-month term. And we would be able to afford the entire business to function without me. Now, if somebody from an outside service came in, like the SEC, and shut me down, it's a completely different story. So we have to get around the ethics angle, right? We've got to know that everything is being done with integrity and legally. We can't blame ignorance. We can't blame sloppiness. We have to make sure that those things are covered. It doesn't seem to me that this new business model involves the outside investors to begin with, correct? So really, the SEC isn't even somebody that would be operating in your space. Is
Very
that true?
big distinction,
Okay.
of course.
So really, it just boils down to, well, what happens if for some reason these guys were out of the picture? Why don't we start there? How would that work, guys? Let's say somebody makes the big investment it takes to get involved to make big money. How are they safe? Well, we can both answer it. I think, first of all, you really hit the nail on the head. We don't use private investing funds. In fact, part of the nature of our transactions are you don't need capital to be able to secure premium real estate and ultimately execute our business model. So distinction number one is that we don't use private funds in any capacity, period. Number two, and I would just maybe segue or preface by saying we tell my story every training. It's part of the story.
Right, you're always transparent about this anyway.
Yeah, and it's really important. I believe it's fair. I believe, again, other shoe on the other foot, I would think that I'd want to know those things. So before people invest in buying an affiliate, soon to be franchise, we want them to know that. So we always come right out. Humility is a big part of our culture. I can tell you that a lot of mistakes were made. There was certainly smoke and fire there. I guess kind of what do you learn from it? What choices do you make when you really kind of go to the bottom? And I think part of those choices are not only what make me who I am today, but have put me on the path to be here. So we learn from our mistakes. We try to improve on those, and ultimately never want to go there again. And so as far as the distinctions are concerned, number one, we're not looking for investment capital. Number two, this is really a business relationship where you're buying the knowledge base, the systems, process, procedures, marketing templates, contracts, all of the knowledge over 23 years that I've acquired from being at the top and being at the bottom, not only in real estate but in life, and both of those are really a big part of what we offer. All of that is packaged into some training material, tons of training material that we think is tremendous. We're always getting better every day and adding to that, but I'm very proud of what we put together up to this point. So God forbid 2 planes go down today. We would carry on. We've got a great support staff, we're very proud of. We've worked hard over the years to find the right people. We didn't bat 1,000, so we've had to go through some people to find the right ones, but ultimately we would carry on, number one. Number two, everything we have is given to our affiliates as far as the systems and processes that govern our business. So we do pride ourselves in unparalleled support. That's one of the big distinctions. If you were to ask people what they like about working with us, we have a whole staff dedicated to their success and ultimately being there for them. Again, if I weren't here, Mike weren't here, that would continue. In a very worst case scenario, we both go down, and let's say the whole company is on a plane that happens to go down, we're taking on vacation somewhere. They have access to everything that makes our business successful. So did you want to answer it differently?
Yeah, no, I don't think too differently than that. It's definitely it's a business in a box. So we're giving all these people, documents specific to their state that allow them to do these transactions, again, without being a licensed agent or a broker, obviously without interfering with any securities laws, since we're not borrowing any private money there. But they are getting the systems, they are getting the infrastructure. Support is unparalleled with us, and we're not afraid to say that. That's what people like most about working with us and moving forward. However, if the entire ship were to go down, we have transferred an entire knowledge base to them. We've given them all of our systems that they can continue to utilize. Would our brand go under? I don't know, you could probably make an argument either way for that, depending, but they would be able to carry on. So from an investment standpoint, as far as the upfront affiliate or franchise fee, if you will, that would not be wasted money. They would be able to continue doing these deals with or without us. Of course, we would hope that at that point they were up to speed. Is there a learning curve? Of course, just like any new endeavor, whether you've got real estate experience or not, there's gonna take some time, a couple months until you're completely up to speed. But assuming the ship didn't go down or the plane didn't go down before that point, they would have all of the knowledge that was necessary for them to continue to go out and implement the system in their backyard. So,
may I add one more thing to that too? So number one, we have a federal trademark that is in place for, I believe, 10 years at a time. So initially we have a licensing agreement that not only we're licensing them not only our name and the trademark, but all the documents that surround our business, everything. I don't want to minimize it because it's an entire business in a box. So that would continue even if we were not here. So that is kind of the doomsday worst case. I think to the gentleman who, I think his name was Luke, my brother's name too, by the way. So thank you, Luke, for inquiring. I genuinely mean that. It gave me an opportunity to share that. I think that the distinctions, if I'm in somebody else's shoes, I don't want to go down the path that I went down 14, 15 years ago, and if I'm looking to buy into this, what makes me feel good or comfortable? Number one, there's just no distinctions. The genesis for Pink really started with my father's company. There's no question about that. It's a great model. It was executed the wrong way. We've made tremendous distinct differences in how we actually execute it. One is by not having to borrow money to go buy these houses. We've got more creative ways to do it. And by the way, as the market shift that everyone is talking about kind of seems to take shape, I mean, there's a lot of indications that it's heading in that direction. What does that mean? I don't know. Haven't met anyone who has the crystal ball yet. But as the market changes, as things correct themselves, that creates more opportunities for what we do. So we think we've got something really special here. We're proud of it. We have a great culture, great core culture at the company. People that become a part of us become part of our family, and I've had a lot of people say they really see that, and that makes me happy, because that's really the essence of what we're trying to convey. But I'm hoping that any notions of similarities as far as what caused my father's company to go down, and ultimately a lot of people got hurt from that. It was devastating on many levels from investors to employees to, I mean, we had effectively over 100 people that lost their jobs through that, including subcontractors, things of that nature, and really decimated and devastated my family as well. But there just were a lot of losses in that whole scenario. There's just no distinction, no correlation from that company to what we're doing today.
Yeah, it really doesn't sound like it's even close to the same thing. I think it's really just a matter of indications of good decision making, people being confident that whatever they choose to do, whatever the audience chooses to do, that they're safe. So since you brought it up, what happens when the market turns? And I know Michael and I talked briefly about this in one of our previous episodes. Guys, if you haven't checked those out and you're kind of struggling to understand what we're even talking about here, please go back and revisit. We'll throw some links in the description below so that you guys have access to the Who Are We videos and some of the intro that Michael's was nice enough to bring a couple months ago. But for purposes of today's conversation, let's talk a little bit about that impending downturn. Let's say we experience something that resembles 2008. How does that impact the business again? Help me understand that a little better.
Sure. So, and I'd love to get your two cents on it as well. But I can tell you that in 08, when the market crashed, I'd like to think we'll never be back there again. Obviously, nobody has that crystal ball.
We've been looking for one for a few years.
Well, we have, and we say it, we're not wishing ill will on anybody, but at the end of the day, we know it's been challenging when you have values that are so high and the people are making all cash offers, in many cases list price or above. It can make it a challenging environment to operate in. So as the market shifts, we hope it's not as bad as 2008, and I think there are measures in place that would prohibit that from happening again, but there's going to be opportunity. Every time there's a market shift, there's opportunity. So we have a couple contingency plans if in fact it were to get as bad as 08, because if I could do it again and we're in a different place in my life, I would have taken full advantage of the opportunities that lied within that window of time. Even if it's not even near as bad, there will still be tremendous opportunities. So number one, as far as opportunities to buy, those will be more available and more prevalent. And there's always this niche of buyers that we work with as far as who we actually sell the houses to. And our platform is very simple. Our mission statement is simple as well. We create homeowners. It's what we do. It's kind of the passion behind our profit. And I've learned in business, if you don't have that passion behind why you're making money, when times go up and down, that can really serve as what the driver for why you get out of bed in the morning, aside from just making a profit. So we think there's going to be a lot of opportunity that is forthcoming with the market change, and with our model kind of being non-traditional, working outside of the purview of the banks, kind of eliminating them for the most part from what we do, at least initially. We think there's just going to be more opportunities afforded when the market kind of shifts. You want to add something?
No, I think, and we talked about it on a previous videos, very spot on there. And obviously just with the market correction, there's going to be a lot of additional inventory out there, but people are still going to have to sell their homes. So when they've got the opportunity to sell through Pink with our exit strategy, they're going to be able to recover a lot of that money that they would have lost on the traditional market. So we're really perched and ready for that. So people that are watching the videos that are thinking about getting involved in real estate, particularly with our strategy, they're coming along at the exact right time. It is the absolute perfect storm for our model right now.
Right. It seems like there are added layers of safety with the model that appeal to me, because I've been preaching for months and even a couple years that it's not a great time to be a buyer. I mean, it's tough. And if you're out there trying to find deals, you're competing against people who are more equipped to overpay for things. You're competing with people who generally have a lot more experience or stupidity. So that's tough to compete with, which means you're not going to win on most deals. And if they are actually great deals, most of them are sold off market anyway behind the scenes before they even hit the MLS. You're not going to get a fair shot. And if it was that great of a deal, it would have been sold already. So you're going to have to think a little more creatively. I say all that, and I'm under contract on a property right now that I anticipate will cash flow even as much as $30,000 a month. Be sure to look out for the video that talks a little bit more in detail about that. But we're going to have to be more creative. We have to find solutions like Little Pink Houses. This is why this channel is a resource of resources for you, because you guys deserve to know everything that exists. And I don't think, knowing what we do know about the 2008 crisis, that there were too many safe places to hide, in all actuality, including having your cash sitting in the bank. So what are your choices here, folks, right? I mean, we can sit around and be complacent and fearful that something's going to happen, or we can find opportunities when we think they exist, and we can, in some ways, put our necks on the line. This project that I'm working on right now, I'm 100% committed to dumping not just what it costs to get involved with the property, but another $300,000 plus in potential ways of monetizing this project. So, look, we all have to make decisions. We just want to make sure that they are calculated. We want to make sure that we are minimizing our risks. We don't want them to be reckless in any way. I would never recommend to somebody here on the channel what we did last year with cryptocurrencies. Granted, we shared what we were up to, but I would never, in a coaching environment, encourage somebody to go out and put a lot of money into cryptos. It's a pure gamble. And I'm not sensing that with this. It doesn't seem like a gamble. Is it a gamble?
I think that you just hit the nail on the head. I think the biggest thing that investors can do right now is that risk management or risk mitigation. So if you're out there trying to buy for cash right now and you're that flipper, the last thing you want to do is get caught mid-flip. And we've talked about this offline. So if you're used to going out and doing LTVs of 70-75%.
I saw that sink. Most of the ships I saw go down, it was being caught mid-flip and not buying for the right reasons. Yeah. It wasn't for cash flow, it was for speculated appreciation, and we talk about that all the time on here. And I catch you guys all the time coming in and still wanting to get involved and speculating that the market's going to continue to go up. And I think that's the wrong way to go about making your investments. So again, help me understand a little bit more clearly. If somebody were to say, go out there and it's a version, a cousin of some kind to wholesaling, from my understanding. It's just higher end, right? You guys are going with more of the premium product, which means you're dealing more with the hundreds of thousands of dollars, $500,000 in some areas, but really that high end middle class home, right? So what happens if we see a big decline in your mid-transaction? You really haven't necessarily done anything other than secured a contract, right? And then you back out of the deal and you're not stuck with the project?
That's exactly right. Under no circumstances are we laying any cash on the table for these deals, and that's what we're offering to our affiliates or soon-to-be franchisees. Right.
No cash, no credit, way into real estate. Obviously, they have to pay you, which we're going to talk about on video. I want to get into a pricing video that's separate from this, but obviously they're paying you, and then it just goes into no cash, no credit necessary in order to pursue income streams that are $15,000, $30,000, $45,000 a month, depending on how much somebody's putting in. They'll get equivalent ratios in
depending on price
income.
Points and obviously the amount of time that they dedicate to it. And I felt like you wanted to say something.
No, keep going, dude.
So what we don't advocate is for people to go out there and lay cash on the table. That's not part of our model. There are some similarities to the wholesale in the sense that we are obviously securing a contract with the intent to market it to an end-using buyer. So one of the things we've talked about that we don't like about wholesaling is it's a little bit feels underhanded. They're putting it under contract. They're kind of under the guise of, I'm going to ultimately live in this home or buy you out, but they're looking for someone that wants to come in there and do the flip on it. So a little bit misleading. We don't like that. We are obviously full transparency, full disclosure, and Scott mentioned that a couple times. With our strategy, you're not going to get caught mid-flip. There's no capital risk. Of course, there is a fee to get involved with that, and we're going to talk about that in a subsequent video. But as far as market corrections, market changes, it is not going to affect them on the deal. They're never going to get stuck holding the bag. We do deal in executive level homes, so what that's also going to do is eliminate competition. From a cost basis standpoint, and these are not distressed properties also. So the typical, investor 101 strategy that wants to go out there and find distressed homes where there's a lot of meat on the bone or wholesale deals, this demographic of seller does not fit that mold. So you're not.
It still seems like there's a lot of meat on the bone from these case studies that you've been talking about, though.
Well, there's a lot of meat on the bone, but you're not competing with 30 or 40 other investors that are going after the same.
It's basically a gap in the marketplace that you've discovered.
Let me just add one more thing to that scenario, if I may. one of the things about our company, and particularly people that are going to be buying an affiliate or franchise, if in fact we're mid-contract and with any deal and the market does correct itself, not only do we have the ability to cancel the contract, but because of our experience and knowledge base, we have the ability to really call an audible right in the middle in real time and then take advantage of the market correction. So people working with us have that knowledge and that support system in place. So things go awry, which we hope they don't go to 2008. It's okay if they make a couple corrections, because that's when opportunities will present themselves. But if in fact we're caught midstream in the middle of contracts, not only can we cancel those, but really reverse course and do something entirely different now that we're purchased and ready to take advantage of those corrections. I just wanted to add that.
No, I think that's key, and that's I think an expansion of what I was trying to get at, which is if there is a downturn in the market, and again, knowing what we know about what happened last time, it's safe to say that you're going to want to be positioned into something that you can potentially get through that with. Building yourself layers of protection is a part of this process. So it's not just a matter of saying, well, I want to actually avoid any hiccups along the way. It's a matter of saying, look, there were people who created some of the most wealth that I've ever seen in this business during the downturn. People that were in specific industries, including but not limited to long-term buy and hold investors. You went out there and bought properties at the low end of the market. You're doing very well today. If you were in the short sale game, 8-10 years ago, you were doing very, very well. We all know somebody that went through a short sale or a foreclosure that were probably dealing with some form of an agent that was getting paid to actually make those transactions happen. So you do want to look at it and say, look, it's not about, this is doomsday and we're all screwed. No, it's the people that are actually identifying opportunities that can be profitable in a downturn that are going to be the people that are sitting here 10 years from now or 15 years from now glad that we were thinking ahead. Okay, so guys, the last thing I want to do is just bring up, because in my response to Luke, which I did respond to his email and said, look, I was already planning on having Michael out to talk about the price points. I was already having Michael out to share some of the case studies and really get into the meat and potatoes. I thought the last videos were great introductions, but they also left some of us feeling a little bit hungry, if you will, for more information. I wanted the extras, like actual 2+2s and actual invoiced amounts. I want to know how much it costs, and I want to know what kind of deals people are doing. So we're going to do that coming up. But before we get into that, and in my response to him, he replied and said, well, the way I found out initially about what Scott's background included is because of these reviews I found. And so I wanted to ask you guys about your reviews. And I'm always transparent about ours as well. I mean, I can count on a single hand reviews from people that weren't happy with me for some reason. And I like to just kind of share how I went about going about that. But I'm curious from your standpoint, what happened? I mean, why are there these handful of negative reviews that are available to all of us?
Yeah, and you and I talked about one maybe a month or so ago, and it was from a gentleman, and we have no idea why this guy decided to go down this particular path. He was a seller of a home. We brought him a full price offer. We had him fully cashed out by a buyer, I believe in 9 months. What ended up happening with that gentleman was he was doing a disservice to the buyer. There were some things contractually that he was obligated to do that he did not follow through on. So one of which was he left a lot of his personal belongings in the garage, making it not able for the buyer to use that part of their garage. So we gave him notice. We, in fact, on our own dime, moved his things out of the garage and fully informed him and moved it into a storage facility. And we paid the first month of that and let him know exactly where it was, and he had to go pick it up. Well, he didn't do that. And if they were that important of belongings to him, you would think that he would have been all over
What does the law require?
Good question on that.
It was all run by our attorney, and at that point, possession had been handed over. We gave an ample notification, so it really kind of fell outside the purview what would have been legal or illegal. But what's a shame about it, and it is kind of what it is. I can tell you that of the reviews we've had, I'm only aware of 2 negatives. One of which was not even inside of Jacksonville, which is kind of our corporate office, one of our affiliates, and had to do with some exchange of keys. But the truth, if I may, he had come to us and had asked us for some sort of a monetary payout.
$25,000.
To not come out and try to tell my background story, which I tell everybody anyway. So
he was blackmailing you.
You know, I would not come out and flat out say that, but
I mean, that's what blackmail is, right?
That's what the essence was. And when we said no, then this came about. So it's a shame, unfortunately, kind of with my story, as I've come to learn, I have to accept it and the repercussions that come with it. Why someone would feel the need to do that, it's not our style, but to each his own. The end of the day, I think what would be important to know, this deal was out of the park for him. It was spectacular. He was behind on his homeowner association to the point where they're getting ready to lien the property. Our buyer that we were working with couldn't even get access to the gate. She had to wait for someone else to pull in. I happened to be a Bank of America manager, and so for the better part of 3 months, maybe a little less than, she couldn't even have access. So we, out of our pocket, caught the HOA up. Anyway, there were some moving parts. He was dishonest at first, but again, kind of one side of the story. We even rebutted it in the reviews, and unfortunately, it's like, it doesn't matter how many good ones you have, it's the one or two negatives that stick out, and that's what people hang their hat on. I understand that, but that is really the other side of the story.
No.
If you said, hey, what was the end result, Mr. Seller, he would tell you, I cashed out in 9 months, got a full price, made probably $20,000 more than I would have had I sold it traditionally, and the house was only about $180,000, $190,000 price point. So it was a great end result. The buyer was very happy. She's a homeowner now, and so we're proud of the transaction, even how we handled some of the adversity. Unfortunately, we had kind of a bad apple that thought he could hold us up, and when we didn't go for it, this was kind of his retaliation.
Okay, I think that's fair. So that was really it for my questions. I want to thank you guys both for coming back on. Michael, we're going to stick around. We're going to talk. I want to get more information about the price tag. I want to get more information regarding case studies. So we're going to get into that. We're going to cut several videos today. Scott's going to be jumping on his plane. We know he's going to make it safely back to Florida.
I was waiting for that.
I do appreciate you coming out. I know that was not even specifically requested, and he did it voluntarily, which I thought was a big move. So you guys take this and do with it what you want. Like I said, I will never continue to have people on this channel when integrity is in question. And my questions have been answered with this. So hopefully you guys will continue to keep us updated. I do appreciate you so much. Make sure you're a subscriber to the channel. If you're not already, smash that subscribe button. Also drop a like if you guys want us to continue to do, these exposés, if you will, where you're actually bringing the truth to light and everybody gets a fair shot at explaining their side of it. Then make sure you're hitting that thumbs up. And until we see you on the next video, make it a great day today and take care.